And good evening from CNN headquarters in Atlanta, where just 2 hours from now, history will be made.
Joe Biden and Donald Trump squaring off on the stage we are showing you in the earliest ever presidential debate, the first ever between the president and ex-president, the first in which one of the candidates is also a convicted felon awaiting 3 other criminal trials.
And so much sets this debate apart from others, including rules tailored just for this occasion and agreed to by both candidates. But there are so many unknowns about what will happen tonight, Anderson.
Can President Biden overcome the kind of difficulties that so many incumbent presidents have faced in their first debates? Can Donald Trump do what his advisors have been urging him to do and stick to what they see as winning issues? Or will he repeat the nastiness of his first debate with Biden in 2020?
Well, one thing is clear, Anderson, is that we're going to be getting answers to that, and very soon. What's also clear is just how high the stakes are tonight, how much it matters for the candidates themselves, for their chances, and for many millions of voters to get a better sense of what the choices really are in November in this election, and for what the United States of America will look like a year from now. It is a crucial night, and I want to get straight to it with our MJ Lee, who has new reporting on how the Biden campaign is gearing up for tonight. So, MJ, what are you learning?
Well, Aaron, it is not lost on the Biden campaign what a unique opportunity they have tonight for President Biden to make a lasting impression to American voters and to cast himself as the better alternative to Donald Trump. Last week of preparations at Camp David were obviously really all about the 90 minutes that he is going to be spending on the debate stage. But we are learning tonight of another way in which the Biden campaign is trying to capitalize on the fact that many Americans will be tuning in. They are going to be airing 3 ads around the debate tonight that were specifically chosen to really try to drive away 3 of the core arguments that they believe are going to be really politically salient heading into November. The first ad is on reproductive rights, featuring a Texas woman who said that she was denied medical attention after she suffered a miscarriage. And you'll remember she specifically blames Donald Trump for what she went through. The second ad features a Michigan sheriff who denounces President Trump's handling and actions around January 6th. And then the final ad will be hitting Trump's record and his character. And this is the ad where they describe Donald Trump as a convicted criminal who is only out for himself. Aaron, this is just yet another example of the fact that the Biden team believes that their path to the presidency is all about presenting a binary choice. They want to reach voters who have not been tuned in much so far this election cycle and who do not believe that November is going to be about Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. And I should also note, Biden advisors we have been speaking to do believe that this is potentially going to be the most prepared that Donald Trump has ever been heading into a debate, and that he could potentially be more disciplined and more on message than we have ever seen him.
And everybody will be watching for that. MJ, thank you.
Let's go to CNN's Kristen Holmes, who's got new reporting from inside the Trump camp. I understand you've got some new details on what the Trump team has been focused on leading up to the debate.
Yeah, particularly, Anderson, in the last 24 hours. They are looking at performance, the art of the performance, as well as visuals. Remember, at his heart, Donald Trump is a performer, and he and many in his team believe that that's just as important as the substance of the debate. His team on the ground here in Atlanta has spent the last 24 hours really honing in on every single detail. I'm talking about the minutia, the steps it takes to get from behind the curtain to the podium, how far the podiums are apart, even the height and where they are angled. One of the things that they were talking about was how the audio sounded from each podium to make sure that it was clear enough from the former president's podium. Donald Trump himself believes that these visuals, like how he performs up on that stage, is going to impact how people view this. And so his team has really put in the effort to make sure that it is to his liking. Donald Trump himself is scheduled to do that candidate walkthrough at any time. He will see the layout. But one of the things to remind you, he often talks both privately and publicly about how he looks on stage, how he sounds on stage, what the crowd looked like looking at him. This is something he cares deeply about, and that's obvious as he steps on the stage. Obviously, this again goes to all of the preparation that they have been doing on policy. They have been having formal conversations. But right now, that team here, they were looking at the visuals and optics ahead of the debate.
Kristen Holmes, thanks so much. Aaron?
All right, Anderson, and I'm here with Audie Cornish, Chris Wallace, Caitlin Collins, and Casey Hunt, all of us here through the night. So, Chris, we're now in minus 2 hours before they walk out. They're going to walk out actually a little bit before 9 o'clock. What do they do here in these final moments? They are both here. They have both arrived. We know that. We saw Trump get in later, obviously, around 5:30 local time, get off the plane. What do they do in these final moments?
Well, if they're smart, they're basically left alone to think about it. I suppose some of the candidates' advisors might sit there and give them pepper drills, but at this point, you just want to collect yourself, figure out what are the main points, remind yourself what are the main points that you want to make, the holes you don't want to fall into. I can tell you one thing that the Trump campaign has been talking about and thinking about is how when he walks out onto the stage, should he shake hands with Joe Biden or not? This is a real issue because one of the things they want to project is strength versus weakness. And they think physically Donald Trump looks stronger and walks better than Joe Biden with his somewhat halting gait.
Yes.
So I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know what the big decision will be. And it may well be that Trump decides on the fly as he walks out. But one of the thoughts is to shake hands and try to project strength versus, quote,
you bring up the handshake. Audie, this is actually very central. The gate is crucial because everyone's going to see that, and so much of this is optics. But the handshake, we know the Biden team has been thinking about that too, and whether he even wants to shake Trump's hand. So is this something that literally in that moment
I think
could be decided?
You should think about all of this as a big reset, right? Like Jay-Z says, let me reintroduce myself. Everybody wake up. This campaign is happening. This election is happening. These are the people in front of you. And if you haven't been tuning in, this is your chance. Similarly, for the candidates, the last time they did all this, it was during COVID. The handshake thing.
That's why there was no
you're
handshake.
Standing, so this is literally a reset moment. How do we do this? How should it look? And what's the most effective way to deliver this information to voters?
And how they spent their day today. Caitlin, we know Trump posted on social media, Joe Biden's a threat to democracy, a threat to the survival and existence of our country itself. All caps, sort of what you would expect. But that was what we heard.
Yeah, Donald Trump has always been a big fan of the I'm rubber, you're glue kind of retort. Anytime someone lobs a criticism at him, he often returns it to them. But I think when you look at them on stage tonight, what's different than 4 years ago is that Joe Biden obviously has a presidential record. He had never been president before. He was only able to scrutinize and attack Donald Trump's record as president. That will obviously be different tonight. For Donald Trump, though, he has a criminal record. He's never been on the debate stage since he was a convicted felon, since he had multiple dozens of indictments and counts and charges against him. So there is just a completely different dynamic, even though we've all seen this movie before. We've all seen the two of these guys on stage before. They are the most recognized political figures. Everyone knows their backgrounds and their records, but we've never seen them on stage with these dynamics before. So that's the thing to look for tonight, is what's different now than it was 4 years ago. And
they're also trying to flip the script, though, Casey. Trump trying to take the democracy point. But, there seems like an attempt to that. We'll see if that's what he tries tonight.
There's absolutely, that's a tried and true Trump tactic to take something that's a weak point for him and claim, oh, actually, the other guy is doing that. But when I think about what's really different between the last time we saw this happen when Chris was in charge and now is...
I may have been a lot of things, but I was not in charge.
Oh, very humble. I know, I've spent a lot of time actually watching that debate recently, but the level of personal animosity between these two men is just at a much higher level than it even was then. Let's be real. Joe Biden, I don't think has ever really liked Donald Trump. We know how Donald Trump has felt about Joe Biden over the years. But now you have a sitting president who sees across the stage from him a former president who tried to steal an election from him, right? And one of the main things I think we're going to be looking for tonight is how Donald Trump handles January 6th in front of a crowd of millions that may be tuning into this election for the first time. Right. They may not have seen his campaign rallies where he starts off with a salute to what he calls the January 6th hostages. So I do think that there are many, many layers tonight that, to your point, these are different people at different points in their careers, but they're also different in personal ways as well.
So how they spent the day, Audie, I went through Trump's social media posts. Joe Biden actually posted a video on his social media, sort of highlighting certain points about Trump. I want to just play that.
Dictator, tyrant,
dangerous, threat to democracy. I cannot in good conscience endorse Donald Trump.
We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or dictator. We don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
Those are the voices of former aides of Trump.
And only a few.
Only a few. And obviously there's many
40,
more.
Right? You could choose from. But that's another thing I'll be looking at tonight. How are these things framed differently? It's one thing for the president to bring up January 6th. It's another thing for Joe Biden to talk about political violence and to use a word like that. There's going to be different ways that they talk about familiar issues that will give us a hint about what the next couple of months will be like in terms of their messaging.
You know, the flip side of that is how Donald Trump handles it. And I can tell you the plan. That doesn't mean that the plan is going to last, but the plan is very much not to get stuck into relitigating 2020, not to get stuck into talking a lot about January 6th. And if he does talk about pardoning, he's going to qualify it and say that pardoning the non-violent offenders, but certainly not pardoning the violent offenders on that day. But they very much want to pivot off that and say, in effect, enough about 2020, even though he's done nothing but talk about it for 4 years. Enough about 2020. Let's talk about the future. Let's talk about American people's problems. We'll see whether or not he is able to stick to that plan, but that's what the idea is going in.
I also think that first debate and that performance was seared into his mind because Donald Trump walked off that debate with you and he thought that he had crushed it. He thought he had done such a great job. And as it is often the case with Donald Trump, his perception is shaped by the coverage and what he sees after and what he hears from his advisors after. And obviously he interrupted President Biden a lot during that debate. And he's even admitted it. He did it this week in an interview with the Washington Examiner that he interrupted too much during that debate. And so Donald Trump, takes advice from other people. He doesn't always listen to it or actually observe it. I do think he remembers, and as we have been playing at length this week, the clips from that debate, he's reminded of how often he interrupted and what that looked like. We'll see if he maintains it past the first 20 minutes or the entire debate.
Well, I also wonder how much the reality of the rules and the way that this is being set up is going to affect how Donald Trump is able to do that. I mean, I think that the perception has, kind of shifted over the course of the last couple days to, I certainly have talked to a number of people who have suggested that perhaps it will help Donald Trump that in the event that he does have trouble biting his tongue, which we know that he sometimes does, that he will not be heard by a television audience. Because, I think one of the things with this debate is going to be very unusual, of course, because there's not going to be an audience in the room. There's going to be, basically just the moderators, the people that have to, do the technical work to get it on the air. That's different from previous years. So it's just going to be the two of them centered like this. Experiencing it in the room, though, is not the same way that Americans experience it on television. And it can be a mistake when you're in the room to take what you feel like happens there and extrapolate, because you can miss things that come across on the television.
The read of the room, and you having sat there at that debate, is it a different feeling there versus when you watched it later?
No, I knew it was a disaster.
No, I didn't mean it that way.
but I will say, I actually think this question of the audience is overstated. It is very intense in that little circle. In my debate, they were 10 feet apart. In this debate, they're 8 feet apart. I mean, they really were very, very close to each other.
And Trump has said that the audience matters. There's a little bit of living for the applause, and you have to be able to play to someone.
But they didn't play to someone, and they were very much under orders not to the audience to applaud. I'm telling you that having been on that stage, it's the two candidates and the moderator, and that's really it. I do not think the lack of an audience is going to be a material fact.
We are all going to see that shortly, and all of you, of course, are going to be here. We're here together, and I hope all of you will be sticking around and more joining as the hours go. Just ahead, we will be joined by Trump's surrogate and New York Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. That and a closer look at what the former president and President Biden will see and experience in that room at their podiums, which will not be like anything any candidate has seen before.
Looking there at the CNN debate stage where it all gets underway about an hour and 40 minutes from now, we want to take a look right now at how that stage and the rules surrounding it, what happens on it are unique. CNN's Kate Baldwin joins us with that. So Kate, explain, first of all, where you are and explain the setup.
I am exactly where everyone wants to be, in the absolute middle of the action where it's all going to be happening. Let's talk about the setup of the stage and studio
first, Anderson, which is obviously important. The candidates will be at the lecterns. These lecterns, as you can see, this is actually the lectern where Donald Trump will be standing. They are 8 feet apart. Said another way, not far apart at all. In previous debates, the lecterns have been about 12-ish feet apart. For a woman who's 5'4", that's 3 or 4 steps apart. So there's a physical proximity dynamic that will be at play tonight. Donald Trump will be screen left. Joe Biden will be screen right. When they are here, they are allowed to take notes. Ronnie, let's show them. Notepads, empty notepads and pens right here. What the candidates are not allowed to do are to bring prepared notes onto the stage with them. What they will be looking at right here, we see our awesome crew getting ready to go. What they will be looking at is not a studio audience, only our moderators, Jake Tapper, Dana Bash. They are the only people that they will see in this studio for the entirety of it. The only breaks in the action, Anderson, during the 90-minute debate are going to be 2 commercial breaks. And during that time, importantly, the candidates will not be allowed any contact with campaign staff.
And walk us through how the core of the debate is structured.
The structure of the debate is everything. When you get to the core of it, which is questions, answers, and the actual debate, this is how it goes. The moderators, Dana and Jake, they ask a question to the designated candidate. When they ask the question, that candidate gets 2 minutes to answer. The other candidate then gets 1 minute to respond. And candidate 1, we will call them, then gets 1 minute for a rebuttal to that response. During that time, when the candidate is speaking, the designated candidate's microphone will be on. The candidate who is not designated to be speaking, their microphone will be off. And this is when the timing clocks really come into play. The designated candidate, when they are speaking, when they get down to 15 seconds, you'll see these are, they're timing lights. They're on every camera around the studio. When the light turns yellow, that indicates to the candidate speaking they have 15 seconds left. When they hit 5 seconds, it starts flashing red. And then when they are out of time, it's a solid red. And that is when the mics switch, if you will. Mics go on and vice versa. Mic goes on, mic goes off. This is all designed to maximize the allotted time in this debate, to maximize the amount that the viewers, the voters, everyone that is at home gets to hear from the candidates and learn more about their divergent positions and how to lead the country, Anderson.
And I just want to point out both candidates and campaigns have agreed to these rules. With me here are CNN political commentators of all political stripes: Scott Jennings, Kate Bedingfield, David Urban, Van Jones, Alyssa Farr Griffin, and David Axelrod, also Newsnight anchor Abby Phillip, and CNN chief national correspondent John King. John, let me start off with you. Let's just talk about the state of the race between these two candidates with this debate tonight.
Look, it's a very close race when you look at the national polls, and a less close race if you go to the battleground states where Donald Trump has a clear advantage. It's not a huge advantage, but it's a clear advantage.
And this is all about the battleground states.
It is. You got to get to 270 electoral votes, right? And so Donald Trump has a clear advantage right now. It's not very big. It's not overwhelming. But the question becomes, and this is my question, the political pros could help me more than this. Traditional rules, this race, given the structure of the race, president with a 38% approval rating, 2/3 of the country thinking we're on a wrong track. He's the incumbent president. The economic anxiety in the country, despite, I know the Biden people, anyone watching is saying, wait, numbers are great. People don't feel it. This is at a point where traditionally you would say an incumbent president is either at or past the tipping point. It's like bending steel with your bare hands now to get that approval rating above 40, close to 42. That's how an incumbent can win. If you look at the structure of this race historically, Joe Biden's in deep trouble in terms of how much he has to change in the 18.5 weeks he has left to do it. But here's the history of the moment. Normally with an incumbent president, it's, I want 4 more years, and the other person says, we need change, we need new. It's Donald Trump. It's Donald Trump. We've never been here. 134 years since the guy who lost the presidency runs against the guy who took the job from him, right? We didn't have TV age. We didn't have the social media age. So normally it's 4 more years versus change. Tonight is 4 more years versus the last 4 years. And I don't know the psychology of that. I think anyone who pretends they understand how the American people are going to process that is making it up.
Well, the answer to your question is we also haven't had a race with 2 candidates who are as unpopular as these candidates are. Donald Trump comes in with his own substantial baggage, and therefore this race continues to be close. But, you know, Yogi Berra once said about the shadows in Yankee Stadium. He said, it gets late early here. And, you know, it is early in a way, but it's also late for the president. This race has been basically very stable for quite a while. This is his opportunity to dispel some of the concerns about his age, but also to take the attack to Trump. And it's before the biggest audience that he'll probably have in this campaign.
As far as the voters are concerned, it's almost as if Joe Biden is actually running against Joe Biden. He wants to make it Joe Biden against Donald Trump, but he's really running against himself in a lot of ways. The voters who voted for him, the latest New York Times poll, 72% say they're sold to vote for him again. That's not a good number for an incumbent. This election, I mean, maybe no election ever in America again is about persuasion, except in the sense that Joe Biden has to persuade his own people to leave their homes and come out and vote for him, because that is his biggest problem right now.
Go ahead, Alyssa.
Well, I'm just fascinated to see which Donald Trump shows up tonight. I've prepped him for press conferences, for town halls, and he's somebody who is capable of getting through 90 minutes, sticking to the issues he's strong on, border security, the economy, job growth, onshoring jobs. And then there's a world in which he's easily triggered. If Joe Biden hits him with certain attacks, if Jake Tapper asks a question he doesn't like or frames it a certain way, he's a showman who feeds off of the vibe around him. And if he feels like he's being isolated or he's being targeted, he can unleash. And we all remember that first debate last time, I think, was instrumental in him slowly declining and Joe Biden surpassing him. So we'll see who shows up.
Look, I mean, from my point of view, the one thing we haven't pointed out, we've also never had a president who is an insurrectionist. We've never had a president who refuses to accept the basic rules of democracy. Never had a president who has been charged and convicted with this many crimes or any crimes. So, and he's going to be up there for himself. He's going to be up there defending himself. Joe Biden is not. And this week, I have gotten more and more proud of Joe Biden. There are going to be grandmas out there who can afford to pay for their insulin because of Joe Biden. There are women out there worried that they're not going to be able to take care of their bodies if they get pregnant. Joe Biden's fighting for those folks. And so Joe Biden has a purpose up there. And which one? I think you're going to see a Joe Biden that is deeply committed to the American people. You're going to see what you love about Joe Biden tonight and what you hate about Donald Trump.
And I would say just quickly on that, I would say don't underestimate how much Joe Biden loves this kind of moment. This is not a night that Joe Biden is rolling into afraid or insecure or without a sense of what he wants to say.
You're saying this as somebody who used to work for
Yes, as somebody who worked for Joe Biden for 8 years, prepped him for debates in the primaries in 2019, prepped him to debate Donald Trump in 2020. This is something that he loves to do. He has a Casey was referencing earlier, the animosity between these two men. He's not a fan of Donald Trump, to put it lightly. And I think that kind of personal intensity is going to help motivate him tonight. And his task, absolutely, is to move the conversation to Donald Trump. And I think he's going to come out tonight with an energy to do that.
Okay, I was just going to say, it's my turn, Scott. John's talking about bending steel here tonight, right? That Joe Biden has to bend steel. The one thing, if you look at poll after poll after poll, that's immutable, that the steel that he cannot bend is his age. Joe Biden is too old to be president. That's the thing that is fighting against him here. He's got to get up there and prove to everybody that he's not too old, that he's up for the fight. And Alyssa's point about Donald Trump being on message for 90 minutes, it's not a doctoral dissertation. This is going to be 2-minute answers, 2-minute answers, 2-minute answers. So you can stay focused on message for 2 minutes for 15 2-minute sections. I think you can.
Okay, but I hate to break to you, Donald Trump is 78. So if Joe Biden's too old to be president.
But you know what? Americans aren't concerned about it. At least that's what the polling says. The polling says they're not concerned about it. He's vigorous. He shows up as vigorous at every poll. Americans aren't concerned.
Well, Scott.
Your turn, Scott.
Look, I think we cannot understate the importance of this moment for one person, and that's Joe Biden. His campaign is teetering on the brink of going away right now. The polling is bad. The image is bad. You said they're both unpopular. Look at the Gallup poll this week. Donald Trump's popularity is back to where it was back in April of 2020. He's getting more popular. Biden is getting less popular. Democrats are nervous. They know he is losing. The reason we're having this debate is because the Biden campaign knows it must change the trajectory. Anything short of a game-changing moment for Biden tonight is a loss for him and a win for Donald Trump. All Trump has to do is show up for 90 minutes and look like a plausible president of the United States, and that is a win.
Van, you don't think that's the case?
I mean, well, you guys love changing the metrics here. First of all, Donald Trump is going to be in trouble. This is not set up for him. There's going to be no audience. Nobody's there to laugh at his jokes. So his whole insult comic thing is not going to work. That's going to be weird for him. Number two, he's not going to be able to run over people this time. He's going to be muted. Donald Trump with a sock in his mouth, he's never been there before. And then also, he's got to sit up there and pretend he's presidential while he's getting jabbed and poked. So I think what you're going to see is a Donald Trump. You guys think all he has to do is go out there and he has to show people he's not a madman.
Well,
he has to show people he's not a crazy.
He has just as much to lose here as Joe Biden does.
That's what I'm saying.
Talking about, I agree with you. I agree with you. You're talking about a race that's separated by a couple of points in the 6 battleground states that are going to be decisive. So the idea that somehow Joe Biden's campaign is teetering on.
Why are we having the debate in June? Why are we having the debate in June?
I don't disagree. Excuse me. I don't disagree that the Biden campaign needs to change the dynamic, and I think it's smart for them to do this debate early. They want to force the choice. I don't disagree with that. I do disagree with the notion that somehow Biden's campaign is teetering on the edge, and Donald Trump has nothing to lose tonight.
How do you see
that? Let me just disagree with everybody.
Okay. And you're allowed. You are allowed.
That's why you're on that side.
That's why you're on that side.
This is indisputably a big night. It's a big night for both of them, but it's a particularly big night for the president, and it's an opportunity for him to go out and dispel some of the concerns about him, but also to deliver the case against Trump. And what he needs to do in each and every case is go back and create that comparative, create that contrast, and go after Trump, yes, on the issues of insurrection and his conviction and all that, but more than that, the issues that touch the lives of the American people. So I think it's a great opportunity for him. And we should remember that 4 years ago, people were asking the same question about Biden.
But he wasn't behind. Yeah. He wasn't behind.
No, just a second. Calm down. No more coffee for you.
Scott's been amped up all day.
No more coffee for you. But he came out and he performed. Yes, it's easier to be the challenger and the insurgent. The problem here is that for Trump is that he's an insurgent and a challenger with a record that is a very heavy load.
Yeah, but don't you think that the record, the Trump record, he's going to come out and say, please compare my record to Joe Biden.
I know what he's going to say, Dave, but he's not going to say that without rebuttal. This notion that he's just going to come out and he's going to perform and recite his 2-minute answers. Right. There's going to be live ammo coming.
Yeah, one minute.
Right. There has been, I think, just a bizarre fiction about what Donald Trump has been up to over the last few months. Every Republican close to Trump keeps saying he is so disciplined. Have you actually listened to his rallies? I have listened to them.
Yeah, Saturday
okay?
was great.
Watch them, listen to them. And this is the problem for Trump, okay? He might be muted in terms of the back and forth, but he also has to actually deliver something that is more than just his grievances, and he has not actually done that. Maybe he's been training, and that's what we will see tonight, but the biggest problem for Donald Trump is that when he is left to his own devices, it reminds people of somebody who really only has one thing on his mind, which is Donald Trump and how he's been wronged and how he's been, maligned and all of that. And that is not conducive to an economic message.
Amen.
It's not conducive to a message about crime or immigration, all those other things. We will see. But the Trump of, when he's on his own, that is usually the problem.
I don't know. Saturday night in Philadelphia was pretty on message. Well, it's pretty good.
Donald Trump lost in 2020 because the American suburbs are his kryptonite. The American suburbs turned on him. And the American suburbs do not want to hear him say he won the 2020 election. Right. And they do not want to hear him say, defend January 6th and say he will pardon the January 6th. So that's Joe Biden's opportunity there. If he can get Donald Trump to talk about that, and Donald Trump doesn't change his answers, because you mentioned Philadelphia Saturday, those are his answers. They start with the tribute to the January 6th, and he said he won the election in 2020. And he did not. Those people were trying to stop the peaceful transfer of power. The problem for Biden is the math is a little different. If Biden can get it back to a fight for the suburbs, then we have an election. Biden has a problem in that his younger voters, he can't solve Gaza tonight. That's a huge open sore with younger voters in America. One more quick point. Blacks and Latinos, especially black and Latino men. The president's math, he has to fill in the foundation of his own base first. And then he can get back into a fight with Donald Trump for the suburbs. If he can get into that fight, he has a chance.
That's a lot of steel to bend. That's a lot of steel to bend tonight.
It is a lot of steel, but it's Donald Trump, not a new Republican challenger.
Well, I do think he has an opportunity to remind people with Donald Trump, when it comes to black voters, you got a lot of insults. You don't have a lot of investments. People don't know. I think Biden should hit very hard on the fact that his Justice 40, which is a big part of the spend out, was targeted toward black communities. That's why you've got the lowest black unemployment that you've ever had. Also, you got a black vice president, a black Supreme Court justice. 1 out of 5 people who are serving that administration are African American. He has made investments in the black community while Trump has been insulting the black community. That's going to be.
But I do think, if I may, I think that to underscore just the historic nature of this moment, since 2020, you've had 88 felony counts, 34 actual criminal convictions. You've had Roe overturned. You had January 6th. This is a fundamentally different moment in history that Donald Trump is facing, yet he's beating Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden tonight has to crystallize and convey the message of why Donald Trump is unfit. And if he can't, I don't know that there's a race left.
Alyssa, if he does not come out tonight and deliver a game-changing moment, everybody on this place is going to be, except for Urban and me, will be in a mad panic in the morning.
But to Van's point, Van, you admire the president's record. I actually admire the president's record. But if he spends the whole night extolling his own record and doesn't take the case to Trump, he will lose this debate and he may lose this election.
Fair enough.
Okay, there we go.
We had to stop when you told us to stop. For once.
We'll keep going.
One last thing. I just think Joe Biden's base is his problem right now. And that problem is so multifaceted.
Aaron, let's go
I
back to
have
you.
more to say.
I feel bad breaking in, Anderson. All right, but joining us now, New York Republican Congresswoman and Trump supporter Elise Stefanik. And Congresswoman, I very much appreciate your time. I know that you and President Trump speak frequently. So what has he told you about tonight's debate?
Well, first of all, I think the American people are going to see a stark contrast. This is just a reminder of Joe Biden's failed presidency, whether it's the wide open border crisis, whether it's the weak national security and the chaos around the world, or whether it's Bidenflation and American families are getting crushed by the rising cost of goods. Compare that with President Trump's record and his presidency, where you saw an economic boom, you saw wages increasing, you saw peace through strength around the world, you saw energy independence. So this will be a clear contrast on policies, and I'm proud to be in Atlanta, Georgia, as one of the top surrogates for President Trump.
And I know you are here in Atlanta, but when you talk about that stark contrast that you say we're going to see, I mean, we know advisors to the former president have said he needs to focus on the things you're talking about, Congresswoman, the economy, crime, inflation. Instead of airing his grievances, he's been told to avoid a repeat of the first 2020 debate. We've heard that from many. We've heard that he himself has been clear he wants to avoid that. One advisor told Rolling Stone today in fairly colorful language, don't be a raging, I'll use the word, jerk. Congresswoman, I'm curious as to whether you think he can make this stark contrast as clearly as you hope he will over a 90-minute period.
Well, absolutely he can. And President Trump is speaking directly to the American people. He does so every day. His message is resonating. That's why you're seeing historic support in swing states and why you're seeing Joe Biden at a catastrophically low approval rating across the country. And his campaign continues to be feeble and feckless in these swing states. President Trump is winning independents. Even in my home state of New York, Aaron, in the latest poll, President Trump is only behind by 6 points. This is in a traditionally blue state like New York that Joe Biden won by over 20 points. So to show that significant swing, President Trump's message is resonating, and that's what you're going to see tonight. And this will be yet another reminder, no matter what Joe Biden says, people are feeling Bidenflation. They're reading in the news, or they know communities that have been impacted by the Biden border crisis. They're seeing the chaos around the world, seeing our most precious ally, Israel, under attack. So I think we'll hear a lot about that at tonight's debate. Go ahead.
I know when you talk about New York, of course, 6 points, you're right. For New York, that's close. Of course, when you look at it nationally, that is an electoral chasm. So we'll see what happens in New York, and people in the suburbs are watching very closely tonight.
Remember, New York is moving in our direction. We flipped up those 5 seats in New York. Look at Michigan. Look at Minnesota. Look at Georgia. Look at these states where he's polling better and better, stronger than any other Republican nominee, stronger than 2016, stronger than 2020. Joe Biden is polling the weakest of any Democratic nominee in the past decade, probably further back than that. And that's because Joe Biden's presidency has been a failure. He is a weak president. The world knows that. The American people know that. Compare that with the strength and the strong economy, the peace through strength under President Trump's presidency.
So let me ask you, because of the comments that you're making, and obviously your point of view on the former president now, your former colleague, someone who considered you a friend back when you were in Congress together, Adam Kinzinger, he endorsed Biden yesterday, and he told me that he hasn't changed. It is the Republican Party that has changed, Congresswoman. In fact, he said because it is not swearing allegiance to any kind of principles or policy anymore. It's all about swearing allegiance to one man who did his best to overthrow a legitimate election and convinced a third of the American people that the election was stolen. So, Congressman, what do you say to Adam Kinzinger, your former colleague and your former friend?
Our responsibility is to stand up for the American people and try to make lives better for the American people. Joe Biden has destroyed economic opportunity. He has destroyed families' budget. President Trump is working every day to share his vision on behalf of the American people. That is my responsibility, and that's what I do every day in Congress. And those people support President Trump. They see the success of his first term, and they see the failure of Joe Biden's term and will be his only term as president. So that's what will be the clear contrast today, and that's what you're seeing in the polls. And I know CNN is frustrated to see Joe Biden's polls continuing to slide lower and lower, but the American people are smart. They feel the inflation crisis from Joe Biden. They are reading the news about the border crisis. They know it's a humanitarian crisis. They see the chaos around the world, and they know it's because of Joe Biden's failures.
On the issue, though, of President Trump, obviously your views have changed, and that is a fact, Congresswoman, from many things you said, many areas of policy on which you have vehemently disagreed with the former president. Here are a few things that you have said in the past that stood out to me.
I think he has been insulting to women.
I disagree with Mr. Trump's rhetoric towards women. I disagree with his belief that we should have a religious test for immigrants to this country.
I don't think that's who we are. That's not according to our constitutional principles.
So, Congresswoman, I'm just trying to give you a chance so that we can all understand better. I mean, at one point you said in 2015 there's no place for what Trump said about Muslims in this country. Why has your view on Trump changed?
Well, I've seen the positive success, and the reality, Aaron, is I was the only elected Republican woman from the Northeast who voted for President Trump. I was smeared by Democrats for doing so, and I've been proud to be one of his top allies. I hosted him in my district in my second term in office. He signed the National Defense Bill. I'm proud to be the first member to endorse his reelection. We saw the success, and it's the most successful president in my lifetime in terms of growing the economy, promoting American manufacturing, rebuilding the nation's military. For me to be able to host him in my district with 10th Mountain Division soldiers as he reinvested in our nation's military, as he signed into law the largest pay raise for our troops, many of the provisions that I worked on in the House Armed Services Committee, that's tremendous success. And now we're seeing the failure of Joe Biden. So I'm proud to be a top surrogate. And you know what? More and more people who maybe were hesitant 10 years ago about President Trump, they're now supporting him today. We welcome them. That's why we're seeing historic support among Hispanics and African Americans. He is going to win this election. We're going to see a stark contrast tonight.
And we will see what we will see tonight. I know we will all be watching. And Congressman Stefanik, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And next, a reminder of just how chaotic the first Biden-Trump debate 4 years ago was that we have all been referring to. And a question, will tonight's new rules be enough to prevent that from happening again? Our Chris Wallace tonight has already graciously acknowledged the challenge he faced as a debate moderator. He continues to do it again and again, even when unasked. So 4 years ago, of course, that was the debate. Here is what some of it looked like.
You would have been much later, Joe.
Mr. President,
much later.
Mr. President.
You're talking about 2 million people.
Mr. President, as the moderator, you have spent the last...
Because they want to give good health care.
If I may ask my question, sir.
Protect
Mr.
people
President,
with
I'm the
pre-existing
moderator of this
conditions.
debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer your
Go ahead. Will you shut up, man? Listen, who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list?
Right. Gentlemen, I think
this
we've
is
ended
so
this.
He's going to pack the court.
We have ended.
Not going to give.
Chris was flying free of a net. This time there are new rules aimed at preventing that kind of thing and the yelling over and people telling each other to shut up. So our panel is back. Chris is back. Also joining us, Biden biographer Evan Osnos into this conversation. Chris, so first a chance to respond. What was it like in that moment? Because as you said, you knew, and you've done this so many times. You've been doing this for 45 years. And then in that moment, something happened that was unexpected.
Well, the interesting thing is that oftentimes a debate becomes simultaneous news conferences, particularly if you've got strict rules, quite frankly, like we've got tonight, 2-minute answer, 1-minute rebuttal, 1-minute surrebuttal. One of the things I'm concerned about is that they won't engage with each other. So my initial reaction was, they're engaging. I didn't realize it was going to be engaging like Pearl Harbor or something. There was going to be a full-on onslaught. Yeah. We ended up having some poor, unfortunate production assistant at Fox, where I was working at the time, count up there were 145 interruptions by Donald Trump in 90 minutes, either of the candidate, Vice President Biden at the time, or me. And, you know, the answer was I couldn't stop it. At one point, the director says in my ear for the Commission on Presidential Debates, get Trump to stop interrupting. And I'm thinking...
well, if I could do that...
Well, no, I literally thought if there was a button that I could push in a trap door and Trump would go down, that's the only way I could do it. He was hell-bent that was how he was going to... I think he believed, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to bulldoze Biden, I'm going to intimidate him, and that's how I'm going to win the debate. And there was never a plan B. He couldn't stop. He couldn't stop himself, and he couldn't come up with another alternative, which I think with Biden is to let him talk, let him get in trouble, and then counterpunch. And that's one of the things that I know that the Trump camp is really talking about tonight. That, as one of them said to me, it's not the punch that hurts, it's the counterpunch that hurts.
Well, and Biden in that debate, it was like he was back on Capitol Hill as Judiciary Chairman, because he would say, reclaiming my time. Can I get those 30 seconds back? Treating it as if he's got those 2 minutes to answer, and he wants to make the most of those 2 minutes. So it also repeatedly cut into his answer. You know, Donald Trump would give his 2-minute answer, and then Joe Biden would not have the ability to respond without Donald Trump cutting in, whether it was at the Green New Deal or what have you. And so that's something else to watch for tonight. Yes, the Trump campaign is advising him, let him speak. Let him have that moment, to have a moment that could potentially cement in voters' mind a question about his age or his ability to do and serve 4 more years in office. But the reverse is also true, that Biden has points and lines that he does also want to get out that he couldn't really get out in that first debate the last time. So those are the two things to also keep an eye on.
Well, let's also not forget that, you know, Trump wasn't just doing this all by himself, right? I mean, Biden has shown a willingness to engage and be aggressive in moments like this. I mean, he did during the State of the Union when there were protesters on the floor of the House of Representatives, and you saw him do it in the debate with Chris Wallace. I mean, we wouldn't have come away with that thinking that it was a train wreck for Trump if Biden hadn't also been there and kind of demonstrated that he wasn't being run over by the guy, but instead presenting a potentially more presidential context.
So, Evan, you know, when we're talking, Casey's talking here about Biden, what worked for him in that moment, you know, we could argue that moment where he's like, will you shut up, man, was the moment that made it for him. But he doesn't get a moment like that this time.
Yeah.
So how does he see it?
Well, you know, in a lot of ways, debating with Trump is like what boxers say about fighting a southpaw. He's an awkward fighter. He does things that are strange. It's very hard to know how to respond to it. But if you go back and you study the way that Joe Biden does debates, if you go back 40 years, which of course is what I do, if you go back to 1972, he adapts his technique to the person he is debating. So in that first important, you know, big debate, he was debating a much older senator, he was a guy who was much loved, Caleb Boggs in Delaware, and he said, I'm not going to be too aggressive because, as he said, it'll feel to people like beating up on everybody's favorite uncle. But in 2012, a completely different moment when he was vice president and he's debating Paul Ryan. Remember, Obama had a bad first debate, and the campaign said, you need to go out there and be, confident, have some aggression. And there he was, kind of smiling widely. You know, it drove some people a little crazy to see how confident he was, but that's what they needed. And in fact, for the second Obama debate, they told him to take a note from Biden and be a little bit more aggressive. So what you're going to see tonight, I think, is an effort to try to say, let me get under Trump's skin, because when I do that, he behaves badly.
And Audie, this is all happening at an earlier point than ever.
It is. That's really important to think about. And I think one of the things I'm so excited about tonight is we're going to get this kind of uninterrupted view of two people who are trying not to look either infirm or unstable. And if you listen to the past
I love that
panel,
bar, infirm or unstable.
But if you listen to the other panel, you know, describing like one campaign is teetering, one campaign is this, people hear such radically different explanations of how these campaigns are doing. But tonight, you're not going to get any of that. It's not, you know, editing something of someone falling down the stairs or a gaffe or whatever. It's just one long, like, conversation between the two of them in space, and the silence will be deafening when and where there is silence. So I'm really kind of excited to be a part of this moment that we are all collectively finally getting to share the facts without having it biased by, how it's being portrayed or cut up or served up to you by the algorithm.
Well, and Evan makes an important point about the preparation and the advice and how that makes a difference, because Obama was rusty when he got out there. We were just talking to Jon Favreau this week about how they were kind of cringing watching him say that he agreed with Mitt Romney on Social Security, and they were screaming to her, no, that's not the answer that you're supposed to give. And then how different that was in the second debate. It shows that preparation really does matter. Obviously, Obama is a great speaker. He knows his policy. Biden has been preparing so intensively. He just left Camp David for the first time in like a week, and when he has something,
preparation matters more than the fact that he has debated Trump before.
I think they both matter, but for Biden, him personally, preparation means so much. The reason his State of the Union addresses have been so vigorous and powerful is because he rehearses them a million times. If you talk to people inside the White House, he just has a comfort level after he's rehearsed it so many times.
But the rehearsed
that's why they built
the ones I remember, right?
No.
It's actually
and that's
the
the
time
issue.
where
They never are
interacting and playing off of the hecklers, so to speak.
And so, Evan, how much time? I mean, how all in has he been? When you look at the 6 state days that Caitlin just referenced, that he's been at Camp David, literally doing pretty much nothing other than debate prep.
Yeah, this is sort of vintage Joe Biden. I mean, if you talk to people who work with him over the years, he will be preparing for even a small speech. And look, some of this has to do with the stutter. He would go back, he would put the breath marks in, the tick marks for where he was going to take a breath in his speech. Tonight, of course, there's no speech to be referring to, but the same habits really hold. And it's worth going back. If you look at the history, as we've all talked about, incumbent presidents tend to do badly in first debates. The exception to that was Bill Clinton, because he locked himself up in Chautauqua in upstate New York for a week, did mock debates over and over again. And that's where they've been, that's really the history they're drawing from to prepare for this one.
All right, all stay with us. The final hour before the debate is beginning in just a few moments, and John King will be with us once again, this time at the Magic Wall. They'll have the latest on Biden and Trump's polling going into tonight's debate, plus more on the states that are so crucial to both candidates.
And welcome to Debate Night in America. It is 8 p.m. here in Atlanta. Tonight's CNN presidential debate now just 1 hour away. 2 candidates sharing a stage only with each other, not a live audience, one of many factors making tonight unlike most other presidential debates, and some which make what's about to happen here historic. A president debating a former president for the first time ever. 2 candidates trying to grow their support and a chance tonight to reach tens of millions of people. We've got late reporting from inside the Biden camp on the message they hope the president will deliver. First, CNN's Jeff Zeleny is in the debate spin room where things are already gearing up. So beyond the debate tonight, Jeff, I understand there's a bit of casting call in the works in the very room you're standing in. What's going on?
Anderson, of course the debate is the main event, but there is a Republican casting call right here in the spin room, and this is what I mean. Former President Donald Trump's campaign has invited about a half dozen Republicans to come here after the debate to make their case and defend his performance, and they are the very Republicans who are on his short list to be his potential running mate. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum will be on hand, as will Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, Florida Senator Marco Rubio as well. Those 3 are largely thought to be his leading contenders. Others will be on hand as well. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott will be here. Florida Congressman Byron Donalds has been here all day. I talked to him a short time ago. He told me he would be willing to change his residency from Florida to avoid conflicting with Donald Trump's Florida residency. And of course, New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik also in Atlanta at a watch party. The reason that these potential running mates are here is because they have been participating really for many weeks in what has largely been a tryout in the very open public. They've been flying around the country with the former president on his plane. They've been attending events, all to sort of see his comfort and a familiarity with them, perhaps more than that, to see how they defend his record. So right here in the spin room could be the final stages of the casting call for his Republican running mate. In just 20 days, that person will give a speech in Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention.
All right, Jeff Zeleny, thanks very much. Back with the panel, but I want to start with John King, who's moved over to the Magic Wall. John, with about an hour to go until the start of the debate, just give us a level set on the current state of the race.
An hour to the debate, Anderson, 18 and a half weeks till Election Day. This is how the last one ended. An overwhelming, convincing Electoral College win for Joe Biden and a big win in the popular vote by 7 million votes. That's how the last one ended. We are in a very different race tonight. First, let me pull up just where we are from a national polling perspective. Forgive me for turning my back. I just want to stretch this out. These are national polls, right? I'll get to state by state in a minute. But if you look at the national polls, no clear leader, we call this, because it's 49-47, so that's pretty close. But Donald Trump ahead of Joe Biden, and this has been pretty static and pretty consistent. Trump in recent days has inched it up just a little bit. So the incumbent president walks on that stage tonight a little bit behind, close though, in the national polls. But that's not how elections are won, presidential elections are won. If you do a state-by-state battleground look right now at the polling, I've been doing a lot of traveling, I can tell you anecdotally, it backs up that polling. Donald Trump, not huge leads, but he's ahead in Pennsylvania, he's ahead a little bit in Michigan, he's ahead a little bit in Wisconsin, he's ahead here in Georgia, he's ahead a little bit in Arizona, and he's ahead a little bit in Nevada. Now, again, some of these polls are 2 points, some of them are 5 points, they're all very close, some even within the margin of error, so the statisticians out there are arguing a little bit what I'm saying. But Donald Trump has momentum in the battleground states where it's won. So if that held up, anything close to that held up, that's your 2020 map. It would look more like 2016, where maybe Donald Trump might still lose the popular vote, but those were states, 5 of those 6 he won against Hillary Clinton in 2016. Nevada went for Clinton in 2016, but is leaning Trump's way right now. So that is where we are as the candidates get on stage tonight. Nationally, a tight race. In the battlegrounds, though, it is advantage Trump. And here's the biggest reason right now. It is simply very difficult, many would argue impossible, for an incumbent to win re-election when only 38% of the country, that's a lot of Democrats and independents saying they disapprove of your job as president, is 38% approval rating for the president right now, Anderson, as he walks onto that debate stage in less than an hour. And he's also in the 30s, mid to high 30s in some of these battleground states. That is an untenable position for an incumbent. I know it seems early, but it's getting late to change that, and he has to change that if he wants to win.
Yeah, John King, thanks very much. Back with the team here in New York. David Axelrod, I mean, you think about the last election, Joe Biden had a convincing win, but in a number of states, I mean, those battleground states, I mean, Wisconsin was like 20,000 votes.
45,000 votes across 3 states, Wisconsin, Arizona.
That's the difference between having Trump as the president now or Joe Biden.
Exactly, yes. I mean, the 7 million that Biden won by nationally was irrelevant. It's how you get to that 270. Right now, he has a hard task because the places where he has to win are Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. He's behind in all of them. The other states are more difficult because they have larger numbers of minority voters who aren't giving him the same numbers that they gave him before. So he, in some ways, he has to pull an inside straight in order to get to 270, and that is the thing to keep an eye on.
And that's only on the existing map as we knew it in the last election. Virginia is on the board. Minnesota is on the board. The Republicans think New Mexico is on the board. There is a possibility here that this map of states gets larger and Joe Biden is defending even more territory than we already think. Just look at the regions, the Sun Belt, from Nevada all the way over across the southern United States to the eastern seaboard. It looks like it is getting away. And to your point, he's got one road. And right now, in those northern tier states, Donald Trump has something going on, and Pennsylvania, David, is the pivotal one. And if he doesn't win Pennsylvania, he cannot win the presidency.
I just say real quickly, in 16 and in 20, the Trump campaign was behind the entire race, okay? We were never ahead in the polls, not one poll. And so for us to be ahead, for the Trump campaign to be ahead at this point, is really, should be really scary for the Biden campaign.
Go ahead, Ben.
Look, partly you get the benefit that we've had the stupidest summer of politics ever. We had court TV all summer long, basically making you guys a martyr, and we didn't talk about.
No, you guys made us a martyr.
Hey, no. Hey, listen. I think Donald Trump's behavior.
Probably shouldn't have committed crime.
Exactly. Maybe avoiding all those crimes might have been helpful.
I don't know.
But my point is, we had court TV all summer. We didn't talk about anything that actually matters, and gave you guys a chance to rally. This might be your high water mark. Wait till we get a chance to talk about real stuff. Like, for instance, this idea about democracy is a big deal. It's not some abstract thing. You got a 900-page playbook called Project 2025. I hope they ask about. They talk about how he's going to replace half of the civil service with his loyalists. He's going to impound money take money from Congress the way he wants to. These guys are he has a nutty program he's not been asked one question about because we had the dumbest summer in politics. Yep. This is a reset button.
But you're the person that says, correctly, Van, when your check engine light comes on, you don't have $1,000, you don't care about any of that stuff.
Hey, listen, democracy is important. The economy is important. A lot of stuff is important. You guys got a big boost because you had a rally around your guy because you thought he was under trouble. There's no more trials. Now we're going to put Donald Trump on trial for his record.
I agree with you that it was incredible, but Donald Trump has gotten a boost out of the indictments. He got, he got help among his base through his conviction. I mean, if I were him, I'd go knock over a gas station. That might clean the whole thing.
Well, but the issue he has here, right, is with suburban voters, with moderate voters. And the message that he's delivering has consistently been, we'll see what he does tonight, but the message he's delivered has consistently been about himself, about retribution. He's really struggled on this question of abortion. He really has not been able to articulate an argument that lands with suburban voters, with women voters. So, starting tonight, which I would argue is sort of the starting gun here, as we know more people are going to tune in tonight than have tuned in to any other moment. They have tuned in to any other moment in this campaign. And this is an opportunity for Joe Biden to reach those voters who are going to ultimately decide this election.
And that is the theory of the case for the Biden folks, is that people are not paying attention yet. But what he needs to be able to do tonight is answer the question on some of these issues that Donald Trump has dominated on. Border and the economy are the number 1 and 2 issues for Americans across the board. Donald Trump has a message, but Joe Biden needs to be able to say, I made the most conservative compromise on border security in decades, and Donald Trump held it up because he wanted it to be a campaign issue. Can he articulate that? Can he make that something that resonates?
And that fits into the larger theme, which is I'm fighting for you. Donald Trump is always fighting for Donald Trump.
I think fighting on immigration.
I think it's the wrong.
If he runs, if he says, "Look, I set this barn on fire for 3.5 years and ran in here with a water gun," it's not the correct ground.
Look,
he's going to get the question, Scott. The question is how does he
I
handle
agree
it?
with Scott to a degree. That I'm not sure immigration is the best issue for him broadly with the electorate and even with his base. His base is not exactly thrilled with him on that issue. It's tricky with Hispanic voters. But honestly, when it comes to Joe Biden, the moments that I think the Democrats are the happiest with him are, for example, the State of the Union, when he has a moment. And he's going to need a moment tonight. He is going to need a moment that is not about policy necessarily, but about how he handles that stage. And that sounds superficial.
But it's very profound.
It's for solidifying the base, which is before he even gets to the point of peeling away suburban voters from Donald Trump, he has got to get his people in line.
You know what's crazy? It's almost July. It's almost July, and you're out here talking about the incumbent president needing to solidify his base. That is crazy to me. But you're exactly right.
But that is exactly where we are,
is you mentioned he has problems with his base on immigration. What was interesting about that Siena poll yesterday was actually Hispanics thought Trump was preferable
on the border.
On immigration. But this idea that he's going to talk to voters who haven't plugged in yet, some of that may be true. A lot of these disengaged voters aren't going to watch this debate on TV. They're going to watch it through social media. And this thing is going to get sliced and diced all night long. So these moments become very, very big.
And by the way, it's not just immigration. On almost every issue, Donald Trump is leading Joe Biden on those issues. So that's not just an immigration issue. It's broadly.
But I also would say, he doesn't have to win the debate on immigration. He doesn't have to win the race on immigration. He has to mitigate some of the damage. Immigration. He has to deliver a strong message tonight. He has to have a strong rebuttal. But he is not going to win the race on the back of the argument about immigration. So there are many other issues that are just as important to the swing voters who are going to decide.
I just want to point out for our viewers, nobody on this stage has any idea about what the questions are going on, including myself.
Oh, you'd have to get the minute. Anyway, I guess I have one on you now, Anderson Cooper.
I just wanted to briefly say, so I rewatched both of the 2020 debates, and Joe Biden ran as a centrist. He performed as a centrist Democrat. If he is actually trying to appeal to his base tonight, he's losing the suburbs. He's losing the people he needs to win over. And therein lies the
And just to be clear, I'm not saying he needs to pander to his base. All I'm saying is that the base has a lack of enthusiasm problem. And they want to see a Joe Biden that they can be excited and happy about voting for. And some of that is on the poll.
But I just gotta make it happen.
But also the list of things, it's interesting listening to you all because the list of things that you all are saying Joe Biden needs to do is a very long one. The list of things that the former president needs to do is very small.
It's almost like he has to change the whole game.
He is the incumbent president, and yes, the list of things Joe Biden has to do tonight is long. It's longer because when you are the incumbent, you're on a more defensive posture than you are if you're the president who was the president 40 years ago. And
which was the advantage that Joe Biden had 4 years ago.
John King, our absent colleague, has the correct analogy. Bending steel. That's what 80-year-old Joe Biden's got to do.
I just want to say something. This part of what's going on. It's not a left-wing period. It's not a right-wing period. It's a turbulent, volatile period. And people out there are hurting and uncertain because of the things that we are all concerned about. I think you are right. If he tries to hit a laundry list of all these different things, that's not going to be a good debate for Biden. What Biden's got to do is remind people why we liked him in the first place, that he actually gives a damn, that he's a serious fan, that he takes these issues seriously, that he's actually trying to help people, not just himself. And if he can pull that off and get a moment, like you said, Abby, then I think we can use this as a reset moment. Right now, you are correct, Scott. This thing is in the toilet and starting to swirl. But that is tonight. That is before the debate. That's before the debate.
Joe Biden convinced everybody to vote for him because he was a benign Democrat.
Still is.
He convinced everybody, please, I'm going to unite.
No, you watched the debate from 4 years ago. He turned these questions. That's what he has to do tonight. He has to take these questions. It's not that he comes out with a laundry list. The moderators are going to have a list. He has some sense, even though no one knows what the questions are, what they're going to hit on. They're certainly going to hit on immigration. They're certainly going to hit on abortion. They're going to hit on the economy.
He's a good
and the question is, how do you take those questions and put Trump on the defense?
The moment you all are all talking about that he needs tonight, that I also agree that he needs. By the way, this may be the last chance he gets to have it. I'm not convinced they're going to debate again. They may never meet each other or see each other ever again. It's late June. I know the election's still far away, but the history of tonight and why you have to watch this tonight is this may be the last
90 minutes?
best chance for Joe Biden to do something dramatic enough to get out of the toilet that you just mentioned. 38% approval, losing in the swing states. He's got one chance. One chance.
And it also may be the moment that Donald Trump says something that is so off-putting and unpalatable to swing voters that he tanks his campaign for the rest of the night.
I think that's a very real possibility.
The stakes are high for both of them.
That is a very real possibility for Donald Trump. I mean, all of this being said, Trump is the wild card here. He is the one who tends to have a hard time controlling himself. And the number one task for Joe Biden is going to be to, in small ways, not spend all his time to do that, but provoke Trump into being himself on that stage and not being the guy who rehearsed for weeks and weeks.
Abby, if the real Joe Biden comes through, I think it's going to be great. And if the real Donald Trump comes through, I think it's going to be great for Joe Biden.
And I think this point is so important that what Trump needs to do is essentially not be himself for 90 minutes and play somebody that he is not for 90 minutes. Do we think he's capable of that? I haven't seen him.
Only 3 minutes at a time, I think.
You got to break it down into 3 to 5 minutes.
With just about 45 minutes to go until the main event, we have new reporting on what the Biden camp hopes to accomplish tonight. Also, California Governor Gavin Newsom, a Biden surrogate, joins us as our CNN debate night rolls on. We'll be right back. With 40 minutes to go until the first debate between a president and former president, there is new reporting from inside the Biden team. CNN's MJ Lee has that, joins us now. So I understand President Biden's team believes tonight is an opportunity for him to try to dispel concerns over his age.
Yeah, Anderson, the Biden campaign knows that they have a really stubborn problem to fix, and that is that too many Americans are tuned out of the election. Too many voters, including persuadable voters who could really be key in deciding this election, are simply not paying attention to the news. And they know that that means that a lot of people, the impression that they have of Biden right now, are coming from and being shaped by these 5, 10, 15-second clips that you see on YouTube or social media, TikTok, and that a lot of the times these clips can be unflattering, particularly as we've seen the former president, Donald Trump, and his allies try to paint the president as feeble and senile. And they believe that tonight is going to be one of their best opportunities yet to try to shatter some of those impressions. They want to reach voters who wouldn't typically tune in to a full speech or an event featuring the president. And they believe that many Americans are going to want to tune in to most, if not all, of the 90 minutes of the debate tonight. And the hope for the Biden campaign is that at the end of the night, many voters will have seen what aides insist is a vigorous 81-year-old man who is fully capable of carrying out the intense duties that come with the presidency. And Anderson, we have been reporting all week on what has been going on at Camp David on the debate preparations. They have been refining their message, refining their vision, going through the mock debates and really preparing for every version of Donald Trump that could come to the debate stage tonight. But those preparations are all over, and it is now entirely on President Biden and President Biden alone to try to execute on everything that he and his team have been working on over the past week.
MJ Lee, thank you. Aaron, back to you.
All right, Anderson. And with me now is the California governor and Biden supporter, Gavin Newsom. And Governor Newsom, I appreciate your time. So you came here to Atlanta to support the president. I want to start just with sort of the protocol here, because there's been this emerging reporting about something that may not seem important but is, and it's the handshake. It's when they both walk out. And do you shake or do you not shake? And apparently he's considering not shaking Trump's hand. Trump's also considering. Or is it a mistake if they don't?
I like people shaking hands. I like civility. We're all, at the end of the day, we all want to be loved. We all need to be loved. We want to be protected, connected, respected. There's humanity here. There's also respect. President of the United States, I think Trump should shake Biden's hand.
And Biden should.
I'd like to, but look, if we're getting into this nitty gritty, we've run out of punditry pre-debate.
Well, I mean, but we know the optics matter. And part of the reason they matter, Governor, is because so many people are watching just for what MJ Lee's saying. They want to see that the President of the United States is of sound mind, that he isn't feeble, that
I also want to see
people are
someone
watching for that.
And look, you want someone who's also confident, walks in. President Biden is confident. He's got a record, and he's got a vision for the future. So walking in confidently, shaking a hand, I think our kids are watching as well. I prefer a world like that. That's personal. That's not me talking on behalf of the kid.
Okay, but you have spent time with him. You and I were just talking. I was with him in Wisconsin weeks ago, but you were with him last week in LA at that rally where that video went viral, where President Obama, kind of took his arm and took him off the stage. So you were there.
Yeah, it's the weaponization of these clips. It was ridiculous.
That's not
I was
what
with him for hours and hours on the photo line with President Obama. He had just flown back from the G7. He had a stopover, barely slept. No one could have kept that schedule. He did a wonderful job in private with all the donors, with surrogates, did an amazing job on stage. As I said, I was 4 feet away. That was ridiculous. And it goes to the weaponization of the moment and the situational nature of politics at this moment. But I get it. Those things matter. We've got to confront those. We've got to be aggressive in that response. Tonight's that opportunity.
All right, so immigration most certainly will be a topic tonight. All right, we've just learned that border crossings are down since
40%.
Down 40%. There's still about 2,000 a day. Earlier this month, there were 8 Tajik nationals, as you know, who were arrested. They were arrested as they had gotten as far as L.A., Philadelphia, and New York. And they were arrested because the FBI had concern about an imminent attack in at least one of those cities.
That's right.
How does the president defend that?
Well, I'm the governor of the largest border state in America, which has the largest land port in the Western Hemisphere. This is not an issue that intellectually I'm curious about. It's one we live every single day. I put the National Guard down at the border. I've been an advocate for the bipartisan border deal that President Biden negotiated that was advanced, that included, by the way, interestingly, $650 million the border wall, 4,300 asylum officers, 1,500 Border Patrol members, as well as 10,000 new detention beds, and Trump killed it. And his surrogates killed it. Speaker Johnson killed it. They had the opportunity to address it. So Biden did what he needed to do with the EO, and it's already proven to create results. But we need something more than just border reform. We need comprehensive immigration reform.
All right. So, but on this front, I mean, I just had these Tajik nationals again. And the FBI had actually wanted to monitor them and figure out what their networks were. They weren't able to do that because they were so worried that there was an imminent attack. That's at least what they're telling us.
But it goes to the broader issue of the border. It's been politicized. The day the president got into office, he put out a comprehensive border strategy. The Republicans wanted nothing to do with it.
Illegal border crossings since he took office.
Exactly right.
7 million people.
That's right.
Is that not his failure too?
I think it's the failure of Congress to work with the President of the United States. The President put out a plan, responsibility of the executive to put out a plan, and they refused to negotiate. They refused to take action. And two of the biggest cowards were people like Lindsey Graham, people like Marco Rubio, were part of the Gang of Eight in 2013 had the courage of their conviction to work with Democrats to address this issue. The President of the United States was willing to do that. They said no, and he still stuck with it, had a bipartisan deal that he negotiated that addressed a lot of their concerns. He moved farther than most, and Trump refused to do it because he wants it to be an issue tonight. He wants it to be an issue over the next many nights through this campaign for political benefit, period, full stop.
But those 7 million people.
That's right.
President Biden, I understand what you're saying about the bill, and that bill would have done something about it. I hear you. But then the buck stops with him, and he could have done something much sooner. He could have done the CO. He didn't, and people came over. We don't know exactly when those Tajik nationals came over. We don't know who else came over. I mean, do you have a fear about some of those people among those 7 million?
As I say, I'm a border state governor. I put close to 400 National Guard down at the border to address counter-drug issues, to address the issue of fentanyl and human trafficking and smuggling at the border. I take that very seriously. We've put migrant facilities together. That should be the job of the federal government to support those efforts. Republicans in Congress refuse to support those efforts and continue to play politics. Of course, we're all, at the end of the day, society becomes how we behave. We are our behaviors. Democrats, Republicans, members of Congress, past and current. The last comprehensive immigration reform was someone familiar to Californians, and that was Ronald Reagan in 1986. I would like the Republican Party to be more like Reagan, a little less like Trump.
So obviously you work with Biden, you're supporting him, you're here as a surrogate tonight. You also worked with Trump, and you got along with him.
Yeah.
And you have both talked about it. I'll play for everyone.
Okay.
We have a good relationship. We're obviously from different sides of the spectrum, but we have a very good relationship. I used to get along great with him, when I was president. I got along really good, Gavin.
Well, you got along with Gavin Newsom?
I did. I really did. He was always very nice to me. He said the greatest things. Every single direct request that he was capable of meeting, he has met. I can only speak for myself, but I have to be complimentary. Otherwise, I would be simply lying to you.
It was incredible. He played no politics during COVID with California. Played none whatsoever.
It was
so
anomalous.
Could you work with him again?
Well, we'll see. He's calling me new scum. He's really elevated. I think my 7th grade friend called me new scum. That's the elevation of the maturity of Donald Trump as he's gotten older. But look, I'll work with anyone that wants to work to advance the cause of this country, my state, and the world we're trying to build. That goes back to the civility of shaking someone's hand. I'm just not that person. Open hand, not closed fist. We vehemently disagree with one another. I live in the most un-Trump state in America. We were involved in 122 lawsuits against the Trump administration. But when it came to COVID, when it came to wildfires and floods...
He delivered for you.
Well, he delivered because we had to go a long way to kiss the proverbial ring. That's the difference between this guy. And that's what you're seeing. It's a bit of a kleptocracy of sorts. That's what he's running right now. Look at the folks that are doing these fundraisers for him. It's all about what they can carve out to get in return for themselves. Trump, yes, I know it's a talking point for us, all about himself. Everybody knows that, including his supporters. But he's carving out those with means, including making deals for $1 billion on oil and gas, and I'll take care of your regulations in public. This is corruption of the highest order, and we will always call that out. At the same time, I'll work with anyone that will work with us.
All right, well, Governor Newsom, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Good to be with you.
And next, we are just now learning more about the whereabouts of the woman who is not in this picture, the former First Lady, Melania Trump. Where is she?
First Lady Jill Biden is here in Atlanta for tonight's debate. Nothing unusual about that. Spouses traditionally attend big debates. Tonight, that tradition is being broken by the former First Lady. CNN's Kristen Holmes is back with new reporting on that. What have you heard, Kristen?
Yeah, Anderson, when Donald Trump takes the stage today, notably missing nearby to give him support will be former First Lady Melania Trump. Now, there had been a lot of speculation about whether or not she would attend this debate, particularly given just how critical this moment is for the campaign. The campaign itself was really cagey about answering questions about whether or not she would be here. But as we saw, when Donald Trump's plane landed here from Florida, he got out with a of the plane with a slew of different advisors, but no Melania Trump. Now, there's some reasons why this isn't that surprising. Just remember, since he launched his presidential campaign 2 years ago, she's attended only one actual campaign public event, and that was the launching of his third presidential bid at her Mar-a-Lago home. And while his advisors and aides insist that she is supportive of him, of his political ambitions, that she is just more focused on raising Bear, and this, of course, has raised questions as to why she's not out there on the campaign trail, particularly when you see First Lady Jill Biden, who has become an active surrogate for her husband, out there. Today, she was even talking to donors, visiting a campaign headquarters. So very different vibe, if you will, from both of these two women as we head into this campaign season.
Kristen Holmes, thanks very much. I want to go to Michigan, to the battleground state, where voter reaction to what happens tonight will be critical for both campaigns. Our Laura Coates is with the group of undecided voters who are going to be watching and reacting to the debate. What are you hearing, Laura?
It's so critical right now. I am at Macomb Community College in Warren, Michigan, right outside of Detroit. This is a critical district, a critical county. Remember, Michigan more broad went to Trump in 2016. It was flipped by Biden in 2020. But this particular county went overwhelmingly for Trump later on. And so now this is what you're talking about. A group of people here who are undecided. It's pretty evenly split. Those who are leaning towards Biden, those leaning towards Trump, but largely undecided about what they're going to do. This is the audience that these two candidates want to be speaking to. Those who could be persuaded, those who could need to change their minds. It's all right here. And they're going to have the opportunity to tell you how they're feeling. At the end of the debate, we're going to be asking them what they thought throughout the debate. We're going to capture on this device I'm holding in my hand. Each of them has it in their hands as well. When they have an agreement with something that's being said, they're going to dial it to the right. If they disagree, to the left. It'll be tracked over the course of the debate, and we're going to have line graphing to show you, per identification of the party they're leaning towards, how they're actually seeing these issues. This is so critical. This is so consequential. I've had a chance to talk to a number of them, and it runs the gamut what they are concerned about. Anything from immigration to the age of the candidates, for veterans, what's happening in foreign policy, the deficit, Medicaid, Medicare, retirees. It really runs the spectrum. This is the kind of room that these two candidates want to speak to. Let's see if it resonates.
All right. We'll come back to you after the debate. Laura, thanks so much. Aaron, back to you.
All right, Anderson. And look, it's pretty fascinating when you think about it. But what's that group, finding those undecided voters? There are more of them maybe than many people believe.
Well, the general term of art at this point, or the general thought, is that it's 6% of the voters in 6 states who are going to decide this election, that 94% of voters are already settled,
yep.
And 44 states are already settled, and that it's only 6 swing states, 3 in the north, 3 in the south and southwest, and about 6%, and they're called the deciders. I mean, they even got a name at this point. And interestingly enough, there was a poll in the New York Times that indicated on the issue of democracy at this point, they trust Trump more than Biden. Now, I think democracy means different things to different people.
Fair.
I think a lot of it is, how's the country running? Right track, wrong track. But it is a very small sliver of people. Maybe instead of all these big national debates and all these national ads, maybe we should just get those couple of million people in a room and have them decide it all for us and be done with it.
It is amazing, though, Audie, that democracy is something that can also be flipped, that it is equally important to some Trump voters as Biden voters, and they see it the opposite way.
Or, one thing that happened during COVID is because there were changes to some election laws to accommodate the pandemic, there are people who thought that went too far and criticized that as in terms of election integrity. I do want to say this is such a great state to be in, because in Michigan you have these amazing students, right, and university spaces. You also have a robust labor union kind of community. You have that suburban mom community that everyone's talking about. It also has rural elements. It's really a great state, and a key one in the so-called blue wall that at one point went to Trump and then Biden got it back. And these are all constituencies that both of these candidates are aiming their messages at.
And just quickly, I got to say, Macomb County, 1980, that's where Ronald Reagan went in a very democratic state, and he went after the Reagan Democrats. These were blue collar, the people on the assembly lines, and they flipped from the Democrats and Jimmy Carter to Ronald Reagan, and that was a real sign that Reagan was going to win the election by a landslide.
Trump voters in Michigan, that same group of people. I mean, if you walk, I mean, in 2016, I went to union halls with Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, and they seemed to love both of those people, and none of them really were cottoning on to Hillary Clinton in either one of those scenarios. And I think you're absolutely right about how it kind of gives us all of these little microcosms here. And I do wonder, you know, what is, I think one of the things that is a big question here when you ask voters to rank their priorities. The economy is always at the top.
Yep.
But then you're also seeing all of these people who have continued to vote for Nikki Haley in the Republican primaries, even after she dropped out of the race. And I just keep coming back to wondering whether, is it the economy for those voters? Is that really why they were doing that? And how are they balancing the displeasure that they clearly, these people are Republicans, right? Many of them have been voting Republican their whole life. Switching to vote for a Democrat would be a huge, huge ask. But that said, they're clearly not happy with their now presumptive nominee in Donald Trump. And which one of those things is going to win out, I think, is maybe end up being the story of the election.
Well, and how Donald Trump makes an appeal to those voters. A lot of them Nikki Haley voters, a lot also women voters. That's always been the question of how he appeals to suburban women and what that looks like. And you hear about the voters and their issues, but also, you know, a lot of this is the visuals and what that looks like. And one thing that was in the report before Laura was speaking with those voters from Kristen Holmes, and that we all noticed as soon as Donald Trump got off of his plane earlier, was that he was alone. He had staff with him, but he was not accompanied by the former First Lady Melania Trump. That's pretty striking, the fact that she is not present at this debate tonight, based on what we've known so far, and we've been texting officials about this, that she's not here. She was at all of the debates before. And yes, there is no audience here, but there is still a lot of Trump allies and surrogates who will be in the room right off of the stage where each candidate has their respective rooms. After Access Hollywood and that tape came out and rocked the 2016 campaign, just days later on that Sunday, Melania Trump came with Donald Trump to the debate and walked in wearing all hot pink. And it was kind of this moment where she was standing by her husband and coming in with him. And she always chooses moments like this to send a message, whether it's the State of the Union or big moments for him. It is kind of interesting that she is not here tonight. We will see Dr. Jill Biden, we do expect, on stage at the end of the debate to greet President Biden.
What do you think about Melania's lack of presence here?
I don't think it matters much. I mean, in the sense, I think there are certain things that are baked into the price of the stock on the market. I think people understand this to be an odd relationship. You know, we just had Donald Trump on trial and convicted for paying hush money to a porn star at a time when Melania had just had their baby Barron. So I'm not sure that connubial bliss on the debate stage is something that is going to sell very well at this point anyway. I just don't think it matters.
You think audience people don't even expect it? It's not as if
I want to write down the word connubial. That was like...
It was very well used.
Love it.
Talk about vocabulary for 100.
It's a frequent part of my vocabulary.
But I guess that's something that's really on my mind, is how much has changed. Over and over, we keep talking about how much is the same for these candidates, but a lot has happened since they were on stage together, whether it be COVID, the Me Too movement, with the incredible burst of labor energy that's happened over the last 2 years. Obviously, the war in Gaza and the political energy that's turned up on the progressive side. So there's a lot of, even though it's the same two guys, we're different. And there's a lot of dynamics that have changed.
Also, January 6th, Donald Trump and Joe Biden have not shared the debate stage. And that's another thing to watch for tonight, is what Donald Trump is prepared to say about that, but also President Biden himself, what he's prepared to say.
About it,
this is an issue that President Biden obviously cares about so much. He's delivered speeches on the anniversary of January 6th and come out and talked about that. One searing message on the anniversary of it, he said that Trump had a knife at democracy's throat. I mean, it's a speech that we'd never seen in presidential history before, someone going after their predecessor so directly. And this will be the first time for Joe Biden to confront Donald Trump about it on stage. And that's a moment to certainly watch, to see how Donald Trump defends himself on it, but also how President Biden talks about it.
And also, Casey, I'm sure they both have spent time thinking about if they are presented with a question on pardons. On both sides.
Yes.
I mean, right? One has to expect, if you are Trump, you'll be asked about Hunter Biden. And if you're Biden, you're asked about Trump.
Indeed. And it is one of those things that kind of puts on stark display. I mean, look, I think for the president, the sitting president, this is something that, I mean, they have been very definitive about saying we're not going to do this. Biden has been definitive. I mean, he was even definitive about a commutation. I wonder, I mean, I think there are probably a lot of parents out there who look at that and say, how, if you had the power to do that, how could you not? You know, so I think that the dynamics there are very layered. You know, I think the Trump question is also one that, you know, pulls, I think, pulls the country into focus in that we are, and I think that big picture, we maybe have not just said this as directly as we should. We are incredibly divided as a country, more than we probably have been in. I mean, you have to go back to, I think, the 1960s probably to find a moment that is as tense as this one, even though this race has sort of been at this status quo. The volatility that is underneath the surface is just so intense. And this question of pardons and what may or may not happen to Donald Trump is a question about the country and our divisions and our potential unity. And that is a very, very complicated thing to weigh.
And all that on display tonight. And just a quick note, we do have some video just in of the presidential motorcade arriving here at CNN headquarters with less than 15 minutes to go till the debate begins. We will all be right back with some final thoughts.
We are just over 10 minutes away from the start of the first presidential debate of 2024, the earliest presidential debate ever. And though the candidates may be the same as 4 years ago, their roles, incumbent and challenger, are reversed. Back with the team here. Van, even though, I mean, both these men have debated before, you say we're going to learn something new about them tonight.
Well, we will finally understand something we've kind of been batting back and forth. You know, with Biden, the question is, we're going to learn how much have his debating skills declined. Maybe they haven't declined at all. We're assuming that they have. So that's going to be important. We're going to learn about that. And with Trump, we're going to learn how much has his maturity as a debater improved. We've seen him do crazy stuff as a debater. We've seen him do somewhat smarter. But we're not the only people that care about this. I just want to point that out. The whole world is watching tonight. It's not just about America. You got soldiers on the front line in Ukraine who are listening on radios right now trying to figure out, are they going to have a country after this election? You have people on island nations with the waters rising wondering if climate policy is going to be thrown in the garbage can in this country. This is a very important moment coming up here. And I think that it's not just these individual points. Who are these men? Who have they become over the past 4 years? That's going to be revealed.
And what are they going to do?
Yeah.
In the White House, if they are there for another 4 years. I mean, I think particularly for Trump, there are a lot of unanswered questions about how he might govern a second time around. What is he going to do on abortion? What is he going to do when it comes to the federal government? What is he going to do on health care, on the border? The broad strokes, I think he's operated in the broad strokes at his rallies and in the very friendly interviews that he has done. But this is the moment when we need to get down to brass tacks about what it actually is. And he cannot just be on all sides of the abortion issue, for example. The American people are going to need answers.
Yeah, but I don't think Americans are looking for a policy debate here. You're not going to get it with these very brief answers. This is performative. How do they look? Can they articulate an answer quickly and succinctly and wrap it up in the 2 minutes they have? That's what people are going to watch. They look like they're on their game. Right? Do they have energy?
That is true to a point.
Stage, it's going to matter to people.
That is true to a point, Dave. And certainly for the president, it's very important. But it's not just how he says what he says. It's what he says, and can he, these issues that you're talking about, can he land punches on Trump and not allow Trump to turn this into a referendum on Biden? And that to me is very key about how this thing goes.
And I'm struck by the historic moment that we're in, and the whole world is watching. This is simulcast internationally, where you have a man who played a role in inciting an insurrection, denied the election results, has now been criminally convicted as the first felon running for president. And 18 weeks from now, we may wake up to it being President-elect Donald Trump. That's where we're at. And Joe Biden has made his message. It is about preserving what America is, an American democracy. Yet he's underperforming. Tonight is the night he has to show up. The stakes are so high, and if he doesn't, there needs to be a real conversation about what to do.
What does it say about the Biden administration? You're going through that laundry list of horribles, and yet Donald Trump's ahead.
That's my point.
I think it's actually a little bit beyond what you said. Yes, those things are true about Donald Trump that you laid out, but also Joe Biden ran on unity, national unity. And he said he ran because of Charlottesville. And when I think about what you said about our divisions and what kind of a country are we going to have, I think a lot of people are asking themselves tonight, what kind of a country do we have today? You look at the divisions in this country right now, we're having Charlottesville on steroids every day in this country. We've got men and women who are going different directions. We've got college and non-college going different directions. Working class and white collar going different directions, rural and urban going different directions. The next president may be decided tonight on the CNN stage, and they have a mission to unify this country. Biden ran on it, and he has not done it.
So you're saying that
Donald Trump is going to be
it's hard to imagine that if people's concern is divisions in this country, that they're going to say, we need Donald Trump back. That's a
Do you
really...
think Joe Biden has achieved his mission on this? He said it's why he ran.
Yes, I think that, for example, he has worked with Republicans in Congress to do some really important things.
Infrastructure.
He has tried to represent the whole country. Look, Trump has some strengths going into this debate. I think it'll be really interesting if he argues that I'm the guy who can unify this country. He's never shown an interest.
38% of America doesn't believe it, right? I mean, only 38% of America think he's doing his job, right? According to the New York Times Siena poll.
But also the notion that we would blame Joe Biden for putting forward a message about unity, working across the aisle to get significant bipartisan legislation done, including on infrastructure, including on guns, and suggest that the solution here is to abandon the notion of unity and to say, no, in fact, we're going to go back to Donald Trump, who is all about division, who stokes the worst of white supremacy in this country, absolutely stood on the debate stage 4 years ago. Let's see if we see another moment like that
The worst
tonight.
of white supremacy?
Stood on the debate
Have
stage.
you looked at the newspaper the last week?
Would not condemn white supremacists. The notion that going back to that is going to further unify the country, that defies reason.
The lack of division. I want more unity, and I think you know that. On the immigration in particular, which is a sore point now, there was a moment to bring people together, and it was Trump that stood in the door. When Biden reached out, we gave away everything we wanted on immigration to try to get a deal, and it was Trump that said, "I'd rather leave the border on fire than solve the problem." So I don't think that he's going to be the unifier in chief to coin it.
But this underscores why 6 in 10 Americans didn't want this rematch that we're watching right now. That you may like some of what Joe Biden's accomplished, but you think he lacks the leadership credentials. You don't have the confidence going forward. And at Donald Trump, I hear every day from people who can't stand his character. They don't think he's a good guy, but they felt like life was better under him. Both need to show up today, and they need to make themselves appear as though they can be the president and they can make things marginally better than people feel they are today.
These are very familiar men, and to the men and women watching around the country, but first impressions matter. Back to Vance's point, who frames this early on? They're going to argue over 90 minutes about the border, about the cost of living, about the world and Ukraine, about character, about personal, about democracy, about January 6th. They're going to have all those fights. But coming out of the box, I think who wins the last 80 minutes will have a lot to say about who wins the first 10 minutes by framing what is this about? Why are we here?
Who takes the bait and who doesn't?
This is so important because people know what Donald Trump's message is. His message is the world's out of control. Biden's not in command. I'm strong. He's weak. Elect me. That's essentially his message. It hasn't been as clear what the Biden message is. It's coming into focus now. I advocate for people. I'm fighting for people. I'm fighting for your future. He's consumed by his past and fighting for himself, for vengeance and retribution. How's that going to help you? But he needs to really, really bring it tonight so that when people leave after those 90 minutes, they say, I get it. I get what the argument is, and I'm moved by that argument.
The comparative that people are making, though, and the nostalgia, as some have called it, for Trump, I think comes down to a simple thing for a lot of voters who aren't political junkies, and that is, I kind of like where the country was before COVID. If we hadn't had COVID, that would have been fine. It's over now, and I don't like what Biden is doing. I'd just like to go back to where I was right before COVID happened. I had money in my pocket. I could buy a house. I could buy a car, and going to the grocery store did not give me anxiety. And you know who the president was? It was Donald Trump. And I think there are a lot of voters who are just thinking, we had a momentary blip in this world. That's over, and we got to get back to where we were when we didn't have daily anxiety.
If you're talking about the United States of amnesia. If you're talking about we didn't have daily anxiety during the Trump.
Wait, maybe you guys had anxiety.
That was the hallmark of the Trump presidency, was chaos.
This economic pain. This economic pain that you're talking about is the challenge. It is a challenge,
Yes.
and I do think when people are going into grocery stores and they're scared to look at the numbers going up, and they're having to take stuff out the basket and take it back in front of their children. Those things are points of pain. The problem is Donald Trump's proposals would make all that dramatically worse. And I mean, when you're talking about a bunch of economists came out and said you would have inflation with a rocket on the back of it if Donald Trump got back in there. And so that's a tougher argument to make. But the idea that you're going to be able to go back in time and have this kind of imaginary, wonderful moment where the country was united and everything was great. That never happened. That's mythology. That's the United States of amnesia. And that,
I think though, David, but David, you know what? I think that we can't paint with too broad of a brush here. One of the reasons why I think Donald Trump has always struggled with suburban women in particular is because of that anxiety, is because they do not believe that he is a uniter. They woke up every morning and wanted to turn the TV off in front of their children. What is he going to do about that tonight? I think is one of the huge questions that face him. And yes, broadly, maybe people are not dissatisfied with where the economy is, but for Trump, that troubled group, it's a problem for them. His temperament, and it's a problem for them that he himself is the source of the anxiety. Putting aside
I want to follow up on that point because it's a really critical point. Yet some of those same suburban women are unhappy with Biden's leadership. A lot of them are Republicans who voted for Biden in 2020 because of COVID, because of Trump's chaos, because of all that. It's much harder for a Republican to vote to re-elect a Democratic president. So their DNA is Republican, and Abby is dead right. They don't want the chaos back, but some of them have become transactional, like Trump. He'll close the border, he'll cut my taxes, I'll block all that stuff out. I think the challenge for the president tonight, for both of them really, the country's drifting. People are still dealing with COVID. You might think you're not dealing with COVID. Everybody at this table is dealing with COVID. Those of us with kids understand what it's like to deal with the COVID hangover. Then the cost of living thing came in. The American people don't feel there's a North Star. Where are we going? There's nobody saying it's hard, it's tough, we're going to make some mistakes along the way, but that's where we're going. That's just gone in America right now. If one of them can at least give a spark of that, maybe you change
this
things.
is actually, I think, the other problem for both men. Neither of them are great visionaries about, painting a picture of what is the country supposed to be. And it's hard for them because they both are not the most articulate men in the world. I don't know how that's going to play out tonight.
We'll see tonight. I want to thank everybody here on the panel. The preliminaries are over. The main event is here. We'll be back with complete coverage and analysis later tonight. And with that, let's turn things over to CNN's Jake Tapper and also CNN's Dana Bash for this first presidential debate of 2024 campaign.